Hello gardeners! My name is Lindsay and I am the creator of the Mindful Living movement, and I'm also an urban organic gardener. I'm on a mission to help other urban gardeners get growing in whatever space you have available and help you to navigate some of the more challenging indoor or urban gardening situations. I'm going to take you on my first ever garden tour, which I'm really excited about, and a little bit of background on me and my garden. So I live in southern Saskatchewan in growing zone 3, and this means that I'm still about 2 weeks away from being able to officially plant out my whole garden, because we can expect frost and sometimes even snow all the way up until the end of May. Right now it is the second week of May, and what I'm going to show you is some of the beginning things that I've planted, some of my cool season crops, and just sort of take you around and give you a layout of my garden pretty much before most of the things happen, show you some of my perennials and just how I've adapted my urban space to try and fit a pretty decent amount of vegetables in kind of a sneaky way. So let me begin. We'll start with my main gardening bed. So this main bed that you can see behind me here, it is 50 feet long by 5 feet, some spots 6 feet. Didn't really get measured out all that well. And this is kind of my one main bed that I have in the backyard here. So it's sort of like flower bed style. As you can see, I still have a pretty serious amount of grass. Little by little, I'm sort of getting rid of the grass, but we've decided to not entirely get rid of the grass just because of, the fact that it's nice to lay in grass sometimes, but also resale value. Unfortunately, not everyone wants a yard that is a giant garden, but realistically, I actually could fit a pretty ginormous garden in this space if I wanted to. So this little section here, you can see some trellises behind me. I've got those laid out. Those are going to be some squash. I do often climb a lot of stuff along the back of this. I sort of try to use this to maximize the space. Really love those big metal cattle panels. They work really awesome. They're really sturdy. All you need usually is a couple of stakes to get them to stand up, and they never have to go inside. They've been sitting outside. I take them down, rearrange them or whatever, but they've been sitting outside now for almost, I think probably 8 years I've had those specific ones, and they're still doing really, really well. I've got my one main low tunnel behind me happening, and this little section right in the front right there is my first pea patch. So I've got just kind of like 1.5 rows going, and I just started another round of peas maybe like 3 days ago. So once those guys sprout indoors, I've just got them in little toilet paper tubes, and I like to just wait for them to sprout indoors. I find controlling the process a little bit easier for germination and everything like that. When you're starting them outside in these like cool nights, sometimes you can just rot seeds instead of actually getting things to sprout. So that's kind of the route I like to go with the peas. And a lot of them did really well, and I'm hoping to have a pretty serious pea patch here where I'm probably gonna do maybe like 6 rounds of peas. I'm hoping every like 2 weeks. We'll see how far that gets me into the season. So this is inside my low tunnel, and I've got a few things started here. So we've got some carrots, we've got some radish. The radish have started to show themselves, and all those lovely little holes, those are the flea beetles. I'm gonna have to come out here with some diatomaceous earth and just give those guys a sprinkling. What else do I have? I've got radish, mustard, these giant things that are sprouting in places they shouldn't be. That is borage, and I let it do that because then I can sort of scoop them up. There's a whole bunch of them way over there. I can just scoop them up and stick them wherever I want. You kind of have to know when you're growing borage that it will self-seed. It's sort of part of the process. We've got just the very beginning of carrots starting to poke up. And the one fun thing that I always get to deal with, and I say fun jokingly, but you can maybe see right there, that little teeny tiny green guy, that is chickweed. And so there's quite a bit. You can see a little bit more over here as well. And the carrots and the chickweed, they're pretty much the same size. So it gets to be really fun trying to maneuver around that. So lots more carrots. I've got my spinach are just starting to show themselves. There's all that borage. Mustard hasn't poked itself up yet, and neither has my alyssum, but those are the ones I've got planted so far. Big empty patch in the middle here. I still haven't quite decided what I want to do. I was going to put more brassicas out, but the flea beetles are being particularly vicious right now. Here's a little close-up look. This is my bok choy, and all these tiny little black guys that when I disturb them, they're going to fly away. Those are the flea beetles, and you can see the leftover diatomaceous earth that I accidentally watered off with the sprinkler from the lawn last night. So I'm going to have to reapply. The bok choy is getting the worst of it, but the kale is doing pretty good. I'm actually pretty impressed. There's not too much damage on that. Broccoli's in the back. They're doing pretty good, but the diatomaceous earth stayed on them. My cauliflower are so-so, and so are the cabbage. So I'm kind of sort of waiting to see how this goes before I bring the rest of my brassicas outside. So one of the other things that I started this year is a second low tunnel, and that's this guy right here. Now, you might be able to tell the one back there is quite a bit higher than this one. This one, the framing, the ribbing of it is made out of electrical conduit that was bent. My husband made forms and bent it. And this here is made out of like plastic PEX tubing plumbing. And next year it's going to get done very differently, but it was kind of a thing that I just whipped up. I really decided that I had to have it, and my husband's away at work, so I didn't really have his assistance, so I just kind of whipped it up as best as I could, and it's a little wonky. The plastic tubing, it needs some sort of a backbone or something to give it a little more strength, because between the plastic, the water sitting on top of the plastic from the sprinklers, the tie downs, it's all kind of warped and doing weird things. It's working, like it's serving the purpose that I want it to, which is just fine, I guess, but it looks terrible. So whatever, I guess. It's secured, it's not going anywhere, so that's really the most important thing. And what I ended up putting in this patch here is I've got a whole bunch of carrots, I've got some beets, and that's pretty much it for the moment. Oh, and I seeded some more carrots. I'll give you a close-up look at that. So there's one patch of onions. I've got some carrots that I don't think are up yet. They probably won't be for a little bit. Oh, all the radish. There's a bunch of radish there as well, though, that I did interplant in between my carrots, so those guys have sprouted. Got lots of onions. My beets, which I'm really super excited about, that are all spaced perfectly. Just having a nerd moment there. I used my soil blocks to get those guys started, and then all the ones that sprouted, I just plunked all the little soil blocks into the ground, all spaced out nicely. So if you're kind of like me and you like perfectly spaced plants, then that's one way to do it. Onions, blank patch, more onions. So what I've got planned for this one is I'm probably going to stick some of my, I'm thinking some zucchini, a big zucchini patch over there with a bunch of flowers. Haven't for surely decided. I might do a second planting of beets, I think, in between there. Maybe carrots, hard to say. I'm thinking probably beets more so. This little area that I haven't actually planted into is going to be hopefully bok choy if the flea beetles lay up. I've got some lettuce kind of over there. I've got some chard that's going to go in here. I've got a big trellis along the back here that's going to be beans, and some of those other trellises that I've got standing up tall across the back. These are going to be an experimentation of squash that aren't going to be planted in the ground. I'm actually going to stick pots on the fence. So we'll see how that goes. This is going to be a new way to try and maximize space. So that's kind of my main bed. Lots of holes, but there is quite a bit planted in it, which I'm pretty excited about because we still have about 2 weeks left before our technical last frost date. The more you can spread things out, the better. I find just scheduling wise, it can be a little bit easier and not so much that you're like rushed. And the low tunnel, this is only my second year with it. Our springtime has been much kinder this year. Last year we were hitting like -20 Celsius in mid-April, which is, there's no cold tolerant plants that are really going to do well with that. But this year we've done pretty good. So most everything I started, I think it was the last week of April, I seeded most things. So I'm pretty happy with it. There's been some -10 Celsius nights, some -1, -3, but nothing that hasn't been manageable with either putting some row cover fabric inside as one layer. I've even thrown an extra sheet over top on the nights that we were getting those really cold. And my little thermometer that I have there has been telling me that I really only dipped down to, I think, max minus, I think it was -5 was the coldest it got inside. So it's kind of keeping it about 5, anywhere from 4 to sort of 6 degrees. I found fluctuation in between or underneath the low tunnel, which is pretty sweet, helping out a lot just from those hard freezes and getting some of the earlier seedlings, you know, through some tougher nights. So that's great. Now, my one little patch, this is my strawberry patch right here, and then I've got a chives over there. So my chives and strawberries, they're perennials, they just come back, which is great. And I'll give you a kind of a tour. I've got a few different things happening. Sorry, we have lots of birds in our yard as well, as you probably can tell. They're quite loud. They're having little territorial disputes. So this is sort of my main strawberry patch that's just starting to come back. A lot of these are June bearing. There's a few, oops, this guy right there, which is an alpine strawberry, which actually doesn't look like it came back. And then there's some of the other ones, some alpine ones that are sprinkled in that are looking like they're pretty slow to get going this year. We had quite a dry spring, as I said, and I don't know if that maybe affected it. And then I've also planted, these are brand new bare root that I've got. They're just kind of sprinkled in around here. These are an everbearing. So these are some new ones, so that's sort of what this little empty middle patch is happening here. And then I've got lots more. This is a little bit of a shadier side of the bed, so they don't get usually as big. My chives are pretty happy. And all of this, I just finally got my irrigation operational, so they've been getting watered pretty consistently for the last couple of days. And I'll take you over to my last bed in the back. Oh, it's really sunny. So this one bed right here that I have on the other side of the yard, this is pretty consistently one of the sunniest spots that I have, with the exception, you can kind of see where the fence is along the back. That pretty much is always like this. It gets like part shade, which happens to work really well for lettuces and things like that that don't really love getting roasted all day long. I tend to kind of hug them right up to the back fence. But this whole bed, for the most part, is going to be tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, what else? I think I have some onions, basil. I have to look at my plant, can't quite remember, but kind of the heat-loving plants, that's going to be pretty much what's happening there. I did also, this little patch right here that says Mom's Garden Patch. This is not me, this is my mom, who's been helping me out immensely in my seed starting and just all things gardening and yard prep. She doesn't have a garden and a yard anymore, and so I've been kind of taking advantage of that and having her help me. But she doesn't have anywhere to grow tomatoes, and that's one of her favorite vegetables at her place. There's just too much shade. So for Mother's Day, I gave her a little allotment in mine, some prime real estate for her to grow her peppers and flowers and whatever it is that she can't get going at her place, just because of the sun and wind and all the crazy things that tend to happen there. And I'll just take you over, show you my greenhouse that I have pretty full for the moment. So this guy is just a tiny little pop-up. And it's doing pretty well. I do have my infrared heater in it going at night because we're definitely dropping down to 0 still. Some nights we've dipped just below 0. And I've got peppers, I've got tomatoes, sunflowers, zinnias, herbs, corn, what else? Lots of nasturtium, some flowers, some annuals, herbs. So a lot of more heat-loving plants, and they're really loving this very sunny day today. One of the things is I always find this greenhouse here, it doesn't vent super well, so I do really have to pay attention to make sure that it stays watered so that I don't cook any of the little children, because that would be sad after all the work that I just put in to get them growing. And I'll take you around and show you the other part of my yard. So my front yard growing space we sort of xeriscaped it, so there's lots of mulch. There's also a whole bunch of rocks kind of lining everything. And for the most part, I have quite a few perennials up here. I've really been working on creating a perennial garden. It's been, I think we're on our third summer now where the front yard was actually finished being xeriscaped. It's been like a little bit where I've been sprinkling all sorts of stuff in, but I've got along sort of this one really sunny stretch right in front of the house here. I've got, I think those are yellow tulips. I've got some elephant ears kind of hiding in the corner there. Once all the trees fill in, it gets a lot shadier and they're usually happier than they are right now. It's pretty hot and dry though for them for this moment in time. And then around kind of the front step here, I've got more elephant ears. I've got a whole patch of lilies that I just transplanted at the beginning of last year. And they did surprisingly well, actually flowering even though they just got transplanted, so that was pretty exciting. Now this one very large patch that I have in the middle back here is mostly perennials, but I'm probably going to add in some sunflowers and some corn in kind of the sunnier patches. I do have sort of like weird sun patches with all of the trees and everything, trees and shrubs and house and all the kind of different things going on. So it sort of seems a little haphazard sometimes, but I've managed to really isolate the sunny spots and use that to kind of my advantage to really maximize my space. Over on the back side here, these are my rhubarb that came from my grandparents' house. They were sort of like really tiny sad little plants that were hiding behind a shed, and I think this year I might actually be able to harvest from them. They should be big enough. But in the middle I've got quite a few purple irises. I'm a really big fan of purple plants. I transplanted some more yellow irises along the other side. I've got some grasses, some daylilies. This will be the second summer with some daylilies. I've also got some purple lilies, a purple patch that is just starting to poke up. I'll give you a closer look. So these little guys, those are the daylilies, just starting to show themselves. These tiny little green sprouts, just the very beginning of the lilies. Those are my irises. There's yellow irises over there. Some of the grasses across the front. So not too many exciting things. This is a purple salvia, which gets super gorgeous, but like just the tiniest little thing starting to show itself. Looking pretty dead for a lot of things, but I watered and it perked up. This is one of my lilac hedges, just the very beginning, which is so exciting. Best flower ever. So here's a little tour. There's some more elephant ears across the front, another patch of lilies. What you can't see here, there are hostas. They haven't even started to show themselves yet. I've got some chicks and hens that are hanging out, a sedum that's gotten quite bushy, and I think I might actually divide. A whole bunch more chicks and hens. And this little patch here, I haven't for surely decided yet, but I might actually put some cucumbers here. It gets a fair bit of sun, and I've had really good luck with other squashes here, so that might be one thing that goes there. And then this is one of my sort of decorative grasses. Got a red fire grass, can't remember exactly what its name is. This big tall stuff is that Carl Forester. And then the sign in the back here, I usually use some sort of vining plant to trellis up it. Last year I did, oh my gosh, scarlet runner beans, and they were beautiful, flowering all over that. Haven't decided for sure. I think I might maybe do the same again, but that is kind of a look at my front yard. Mostly perennials, but I do squeak in quite a few other vegetable type plants in kind of the sneaky sunny spots. So that is the look at my sort of outside garden tour. I do have lots of seedlings happening in the house that are just patiently waiting before I can bring them outside. Both for just space in my greenhouse, and some stuff I'm kind of holding on to and waiting to get a little bit bigger so that hopefully the flea beetles aren't quite as vicious. But yeah, it's pretty brown. There's not a lot happening yet. It's just like the beginning of a lot of the perennials just starting to green up. I really only started watering the grass and my perennials like a few days ago. I probably should have started watering them a little bit sooner, but I have noticed everything is really perked up since I've started doing that. So it's going to be quite a change, I think, from the next garden tour that I do. So this is the beginning, the starting point, and I'll take you along over the season and share with you all the changes that happen. If you have questions, I would love to hear from you, or if you just want to share how your garden is doing, drop it in the comments, and we will see you guys again soon. Wishing you all the abundance and happy plants. Have a great rest of your day.